about evolution and the famous scientists associated with the theory. Today we are going to talk about probably the most well-known scientists that have contributed to the theory of evolution, and this scientist is known as Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin was born in 1809 and died in 1882, and most notably he is known for his theory on natural selection. Natural selection is the process in which organisms that are best suited for the environment that they live in will reproduce more frequently than other organisms that are not so well suited for the environment. He's actually a world traveler. Came from Europe, and he's traveled a few places in Africa, as well as to Australia and to South America. And it was in South America that he made most of his theories, and essentially why he's most famous. He went to this one island. It's starred over here in the corner, right to the west of South Africa. And these islands, because there's a chain of them, are known as the Galapagos Islands. And it was here that he was able to come up with his theory of natural selection. When he got to the Galapagos Islands, he saw that there was a vast array of various species. However, he saw that all these species looked very similar, just with little tiny differences. These differences he named as adaptations. Now, if you look up in the top right-hand corner, you see that there's all these 4 birds. Now, these birds are essentially the same bird. They're all finches, but they all have different shaped beaks. These differences in their beaks are what allows them to have different food preferences. The bird that is in the top left-hand corner is actually a nut-eating bird, while this bird in the lower right eats insects. You can tell that it eats that kind of food based off of the shape of its beak. These different shapes have actually been chosen based off of what food was available for the birds at the time. He also came up with the 5 evidences of evolution. The first evidence most of you guys know, and if you look at the pictures below, I'm sure you can guess that they're known as fossils. Fossils just provide evidence of change over time. We've been able to see how organisms, or reptiles mainly, and humans have been able to change and evolve to better suit their environment. Dinosaurs were large creatures, and even back in those days there was other reptiles and birds that were surviving. We still have reptiles and birds today, but they are much smaller and very different than what birds or reptiles you would see back then. You can find fossils almost anywhere in the world. They can be deep within the ground, they can be frozen, they could be underwater in sediment at the very bottom, or they could be even trapped in amber. So looking all these different places, we're able to find a vast array of different fossils that show the different types of organisms that were living throughout history. The second evidence of evolution were known as homologous and analogous structures. The first one we're going to talk about is homologous structures. When you look at the word homologous, you see at the very beginning, the prefix of the word is homo. Homo means same. So these are going to be similar features that are shared from a common ancestor. It's really important that you understand that these come from a common ancestor, because we're going to talk about analogous structures that are very similar but different in that one aspect. An example of homologous structures would be the human forelimb, as well as a cat's, a whale's, and a bat's. Now you might think all these creatures are so different, but if you look at their bones, you can see that they all have this long bone, which would be known as the radius. The cat has a radius bone, the whale has a radius bone, granted it is smaller, and a bat has a very long skinny radius bone. They also show that there's the wrist bones in here. Cat has wrist bones, a whale has wrist bones, and even a bat has very, very tiny, but they're there, wrist bones. This is the same with the fingers. They all have fingers This is just various in length, and that basically comes from how adaptations. Obviously, a whale swims in water, so it needs a longer fin, so it's able to push water. But we need fingers that are smaller and shorter, so that we're able to grab things, reach things, and touch things. Analogous features, on the other hand, are features that serve identical functions and look alike, but are not shared from a common ancestor. A common example of this would be a shark and a dolphin. They both have a tail fin, and that tail fin is both used for swimming. However, a shark and a dolphin do not have a common ancestor. The shark is a fish, and a dolphin is a mammal, so they come from two different branches of the evolutionary tree. However, they both have a tail fin, and they both use it to swim. So, homologous structures, they are identical structures that come from a common ancestor. Analogous structures serve identical functions, but do not come from a common ancestor. The third evidence of evolution are vestigial structures. Vestigial structures are structures or features that no longer serve any known function that we know of. Humans actually have a tailbone. We do not need a tail, and we do not have a tail, but we have a tailbone. At some point in time, we might have used this, or they might have served a purpose, but at this point in time, they don't. We also have in the corner of our eyes a nictitating membrane. This was actually able to, kind of like a frog, cover our eyes to protect us maybe from water, but it no longer actually comes out and covers the eyes. It is basically shrunk up, so it's not really used anymore. These are vestigial structures. The fourth evidence of evolution is similarities in embryology. Embryology is just the study of the embryo, or basically how a fetus is forming. And in the early stages, even of different animals, the embryos look very similar. We have a fish, a reptile, a bird, and a human. And as you can see, they all have what looks like a little spinal column forming. And interestingly enough, they all have gills. Yes, even when you were in the womb, you did have gills. However, as you matured, the gills basically cinched back up, and that's whenever your lungs were developed and you were able to start breathing through that means. The last evidence of evolution is similarities in macromolecules. Macro means large, so these are going to be talking about large molecules. Hemoglobin is a large molecule. Hemoglobin is the molecule that is on your red blood cells that actually allows you to grab on oxygen that you breathe in and take it to all your muscles so that you're able to do your everyday functions. A lot of animals actually have very similar, if not the exact same hemoglobin structure. So if they have a similar hemoglobin structure, that means that they must be closely related, seeing as they're using the same thing. I hope you have enjoyed the evidences of evolution and learned a little bit about Charles Darwin, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you.